picking up underage
Nonetheless,
prostitutes.
the decision ultimately was made to hand over the records to a responsible media outlet, in this case ABC News in New York, without compensation and/or promises or guarantees of any sort. Even though ABC News is under no obligation whatsoever to me, I do expect their reporting to help identify potential witnesses for my defense. For me, this is an absolute necessity, since the government has placed me in the untenable position whereby I do not have sufficient monies to undertake this extraordinarily expensive task. Consequently, I would ask the press and the media to put aside the titillation of the who's who's list, at least in part, and instead investigate the disturbing genesis, the confounding evolution, and the equally alarming continuation of this matter. I believe there is something very, very rotten at the core of my circumstance, and without money to hire my own investigators, I must rely upon your acumen and talent here in the press and the media to uncover the truth.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
Pentagon porn story began in 2006. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement child pornography sting operation called Project Flicker produced payment records of about 5,200 people, many of whom provided Army or fleet zip codes or military email addresses. Subsequently, the Pentagon's investigative branch, DCIS, began going through the ICE list to identify who actually was a DoD employee or a contractor. The investigation, however, only ran for 8 months and only cross-checked some 3,500 names for Pentagon ties, according to a senator. According to DCIS documents revealed in a Freedom of Information Act request, out of that 3,500, investigators uncovered 264 employees or contractors, including staffers for the Secretary of Defense and contractors at the NSA. 9 people had top security clearances, but only about 20% of those 264 people were completely investigated. Fewer still were prosecuted, and after about 8 months, the entire probe was halted. It left about 1,700 names totally unchecked, 1,700 alleged kiddie porn customers, an unknown number of whom may still work in some capacity for the Defense Department.
But, you don't look at Denny Hastert and think Northern Illinois University. You don't look at him and think, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. You look at him and think U.S. House of Representatives. He was the longest-serving Republican speaker in U.S. history. But so far as the U.S. House of Representatives is concerned, they, as an institution, have done nothing to distance themselves from Denny Hastert, other than taking down his picture. Literally, they took his portrait down in the hall, and that's it. The U.S. House of Representatives has the ability to censure both its members and its former members if they want to. It's not an everyday thing. Last time a former House member was censured was in the 19th century. It doesn't happen often. But then neither does Denny Hastert. He's the highest-ranking American elected official to have ever been sentenced to prison. He's the only high-ranking American official to have been sentenced to prison after admitting in open court to being a serial child molester. This Denny Hastert thing is not a run-of-the-mill former member of Congress gone bad thing. He was the longest-serving ever Republican Speaker of the House, and it was not that long ago that he was Speaker. But since he has been convicted and sentenced to prison and given a report date, even as all these other institutions in the country have taken steps to disassociate themselves from him and make clear where they stand in relation to Denny Hastert, Congress, the House of Representatives, has said beep, nothing, no reprimand, no censure. Are they really just going to let this go?
Were Deutsche Bank and J.P. Morgan bigwigs complicit in Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of young women? The attorney for Epstein's accusers make that claim in new legal filings. I'm Anjanette Levy, and welcome to Law and Crime's Sidebar podcast. The saga involving Jeffrey Epstein, it just seems like it's never, ever going away. Jeffrey Epstein, of course, is the convicted sex offender, but also a multimillionaire, maybe even a billionaire, who was accused by many women of treating them as sex slaves. So joining me to talk about these new claims being made in legal filings by the accusers of Jeffrey Epstein is Adam Klasfeld. He's the managing editor of lawandcrime.com and also the host of the Objections podcast produced by Law and Crime. So Adam, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on. These are some pretty explosive allegations, but maybe not totally surprising if you've been following this case because, you know, Jeffrey Epstein is somebody who mingled with royalty, who mingled with former presidents. So it's not shocking for us to hear that possibly there were bigwigs with these big banks who may have known about what was going on with him.
At 6:32, breaking overnight, an FBI raid with big implications for a Florida doctor, and this investigation centers on West Palm Beach, but we're learning of alleged ties to senators. Katie Johnson has more from the scene.
Well, we are right outside of the Vitreoretinal Consultants Eye Center here in West Palm Beach, which belongs to Dr. Salomon Melgen. According to the Miami Herald, Melgen owes the IRS millions of dollars, despite the fact that he donated hundreds of thousands to several politicians. FBI agents came here late last night and worked into the morning, searching through the office and taking away potential evidence. According to the Miami Herald, Dr. Melgen has an outstanding lien of more than $11 million to the IRS. But the report shows Melgen also donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians. The doctor is also accused of providing Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey with underage prostitutes while on free trips to the Dominican Republic. Now, FBI agents at the scene overnight did not talk to any reporters, but we will be sure to check in with them later on this morning and today on this developing story. For ABC Action News, I'm Katie Johnson.
According to former New Jersey Boy Scout John Humphrey, that trouble started in 1972, just 12 years old, when he says his scoutmaster abused him.
I was abused over a period of 3 years, probably well over 200 times by my scoutmaster, who was also my assistant principal, my band leader, my soccer coach, and had unfettered access to me. So I stuffed it away in a place, and I never talked to anybody about it.
A painful secret he says he kept to himself until 2017.
It changes your life when you come out. I mean, it's cost me a job, income, the difficulty to maintain employment. Either because you get some domineering boss and you just want to tell them to jump in a lake, or you can't stay focused.
Now John is sharing his story in the harrowing new documentary on Hulu, Leave No Trace, a hidden history of the Boy Scouts.
Parents gave the Boy Scouts the most valuable thing they had, their children.
Shining a light on survivors of sexual abuse and a century-long scandal inside the Boy Scouts of America, the organization concealing that there were pedophiles in their ranks.
When the detective says he confessed to abusing you, I must have read the email 100 times.
Even with all that has been known about the Catholic Church's sexual abuse scandals, today's revelations about the historical role of Pope John Paul II in the elevation of a former archbishop accused of sexual abuse was stunning. A report from the Vatican found two popes either ignored, overlooked, or downplayed allegations when it came to taking tough action against Theodore McCarrick over 2 decades. Amna Nawaz has the story.
Judy, the 449-page report found that before John Paul II elevated Theodore McCarrick to Archbishop of Washington, he already was aware of multiple allegations against McCarrick. That included reports of sexual misconduct with another priest, sharing beds with seminarians, and anonymous letters accusing him of pedophilia with his nephews. But McCarrick denied those allegations, and he rose to become one of the most powerful and well-known Catholic leaders in the United States. The investigation also found that Pope Benedict delayed an investigation into McCarrick's behavior, and that Pope Francis also did not act on allegations about McCarrick until 2017, believing that Pope John Paul II had already reviewed them. McCarrick was removed as Archbishop in 2006, but wasn't defrocked, that is to say removed from the church, until 2019.
Latest now on former Subway spokesman Jared Fogle, expected to plead guilty to charges of possessing child pornography. ABC's Alex Perez is in Indianapolis with the details. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, George. Details is still developing, but the U.S. attorney could be here at the courthouse discussing possible charges in this case a little bit later today.
Hi, I'm Jared, the Subway guy.
Overnight, ABC News confirming Jared, the Subway guy Fogle, is expected to plead guilty to charges related to a child porn investigation. Subway quickly severing ties with Fogle following the news, tweeting, "We no longer have a relationship with Jared and have no further comment."
Gymnastics scandal. A longtime Team USA doctor now charged with sexual abuse, allegedly targeting multiple young gymnasts. And ABC's Paula Ferris is here with that story. Good morning, Paula.
Good morning to you, Amy. These sexual assault charges are rocking the gymnastics world. Larry Nassar was Team USA's doctor in 4 Olympics, treating the sport's biggest stars. And now the former Michigan State doctor is being called a monster and could spend the rest of his life behind bars.
This morning, Larry Nassar, a top sports doctor who treated Olympic athletes, is facing 22 criminal charges of sexual abuse.
Young women athletes who came to him for medical treatment. Instead, Dr. Nassar preyed on these young girls.
Joining us to discuss this, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, the Pentagon already takes measures to limit worker access to stuff like porn by rolling out what they call the Personal Electronic Device PED policy, where workers have to drop off their phones and lockers before entering their offices. All their online searches are accessible by security if or when needed. Their Wi-Fi access is monitored in digital security sweeps. So how is this happening?
Well, it's happening because even though there is a certain amount of limitation on access, those who are working in the Department of Defense, clearly it appears to be thousands of individuals in the Department of Defense, are finding ways around this, specifically by using the Department of Defense IP addresses and also apparently peer-to-peer sharing within the department's network. So this study that was done on this issue, and it is pretty horrifying, Manila, to consider this. It shows that the Department of Defense ranked 19th out of almost 3,000 networks in terms of peer-to-peer sharing of child pornography. That is absolutely incredible. This bill attempts to essentially say, look, we're not doing enough to stop it from coming in, but we're also not doing enough in the Department of Defense to go after those individuals who are being recognized as the ones who were perpetrating this.
So Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is the co-author to this bill. She said this, quote, "The notion that the Department of Defense's network and Pentagon-issued computers may be used to view, create, or circulate such horrifying images is a shameful disgrace